story with you. It's about a person who came in to a hospital in Denmark. He was being hospitalized because he was trying to commit suicide. In order to do so, he had eaten a full box of tablets, of deadly tablets. He emptied it all. He ate them all, and when he was brought into the hospital, he was in a very bad mental state. So the doctors, they try to do whatever doctors try to do in a situation like that. They were trying to stabilize his situation, but it did not matter what they did. It did not work. So they were actually losing contact to this man. He had a very low heart frequency, a very low pulse, and a very low respiration. So it was very hard to be in contact with this man, and he was getting in a worse and worse condition. The problem was they did not know, the doctors, what medicine he had taken, because the pill glass, well, he brought actually the pill glass with him, but it was empty, and it did not say on the pill glass what kind of medicine he had been taking. There was only a small label on the pill glass with a code. And just to try something, the doctors actually tapped this code into their computer, and by luck, it showed up that this man was part of a medical research project, and he was actually a part of the research project in the same hospital. So they contacted the doctor in charge for this research project, and he was at work. A few minutes later, he was in the intensive care where this man was hospitalized. At the time being, this man was even in a worse condition. They were starting to lose him. His heart frequency was even lower, and the pulse was not possible to feel. The doctor who was in charge of the research project, he tapped the man into his computer, and it was absolutely right. He was in his medicine study project, and he was in the placebo group. This means that this man has actually taken a full pill glass of sugar pills with no medication in it whatsoever. They told this to the man, and 15 minutes later, he was able to walk out of the hospital. So for me, this story is an example that the thought, the belief alone is powerful enough almost to kill ourselves. This man actually almost killed himself just by thinking, believing that he had eaten a full glass of dangerous tablets. So if this is what the thoughts can actually do, then we might start to think about what we are thinking instead of just thinking automatically like some of us possibly do during our daily life. So as a coach trainer, I've had the pleasure of being traveling around the world doing coach trainings. And as you know, coaching is also about goals, about finding out what my dreams and what my goals is, and making plans in order to achieve that. And I've experienced that it does not matter where in the world I've been, people tend to have different goals, different dreams. And at the same time, I've had the experience that people also somehow perhaps have a universal goal. Perhaps there's one thing that we all want as human beings, a universal goal, and that is being happy, having a pleasant life. I don't know if that counts for you. If it does, then you will be part of my statistics in this matter. So, and at the same time, it seems to be there seems to be a complex situation here, because if we all want a happy and pleasant life, how is it possible that so many of us does not have the pleasant life we actually want to have? More and more people are getting dissatisfied during work. In Denmark, 50% of the population are divorced, and we are still the most happy people in the world, I believe. So how can we be that and still being so unhappy in our marriage that 50% of all couples are being divorced? through the lifetime of the marriage. Even questionnaires amongst children gives the result that more children than ever are not satisfied in life. So how come there's a complex here that we actually want to be happy, and still there are actually some things in life that makes it very difficult. In order to investigate this I've made a budget of happiness. If you work with budgets or accounts, you might know how these budgets or accounts are made. So we have a balance produced from assets and liabilities, and then we have results which comes from income and expenses. And we have some principles for accounts or for budgets, especially for accounts, that one only thing in the account, if we have a too high expense, it can actually make the whole account turn out with red figures in the bottom. And if we have one income, we increase one income, we can change the whole account. Also, another principle of accounts is that we need to have as many assets and income as possible, and as low liabilities and expenses as possible, in order to produce a positive result. And this also counts for the budget of happiness. So the more assets and income we have, the more happiness we get, and the more liabilities and expenses we have, the harder it gets to become happy. I've presented here for you some things, some factors that might influence of the level of happiness that we feel in our lives. And I would like to go through not all, but a few of these assets, so you can count, you can check with yourself if that is something that is influencing on your budget of happiness. So first of all, if we look into the assets, then we have things like emotional intelligence and social competence that are very important at the time, because that's related to relations, and relations are tremendously important if in order to become happy today. But then we have self-esteem. Until a short while ago, a few years ago, self-esteem was actually counted one of the most important things in order to become happy. Because if I have a low self-esteem, then actually it has influences in a lot of other factors in life. So this was called out to be the most important asset. But a few years ago, self-control was actually taking the lead. Now, self-control is that my impulse control. I don't know if you have heard about the marshmallow experiment. It's a very cruel experiment where you put a boy or a girl aged 3 to 4 years old in a room alone with a marshmallow. And you tell this kid, if he can let the marshmallow be on the plate for 15 minutes, he will get another one. If he cannot, if he eats the marshmallow, he will not get another marshmallow. And then you leave the room, and then you see these kids suffering for either a few seconds until they eat the marshmallow, or the full 15 minutes until they get another one. And actually, the research into this has shown that the children showing self-control have a lot of a higher chance of getting success and happiness throughout the life. So self-control seems to be an extremely important thing. If you try the marshmallow experiment on your kids and they eat the marshmallow before the 15 minutes, please do not panic, because self-control can actually be learned. Then we know that sleep and food and rest is important for us. You might have experienced, if you have slept too little, how hard it is to actually accomplish everything the next day, how irritated, annoyed you can become very fast, and a good night's sleep is enough for the tolerance to become much larger. Then recognition is very important. Recognition from other people. We can get recognition from our chief, our manager, or we can get recognition from ourselves. So we can get recognition from two different sources. But of course, if my self-esteem is low, I might not be able to recognize myself. So I might need recognition from another source. And on that, I'm dependent on other people's recognition in order for me to feel better. Also, of course, if I'm experiencing success in my life, I can feel happy. That's a very heavy income. Unless, again, my self-esteem is low, because if that is low, I will not be able to see the success in my life. But for sure, I will be able to see the failures. Also, research shows, if I'm responsible to have control and ownership in a part of my life, I will actually have a higher degree of happiness in that area. If we move to the liabilities, then and take a look at life attitude, then we can have either I can be an optimist or I can be a pessimist. That defines my attitude toward life. And research shows that pessimists, they actually die younger and get more sick, especially in the late part of the life. So that means there's a direct link between my life attitude and my health and my the number of years I live. Also, of course, if I've had traumas and crises, and I guess throughout life, all of us will experience some degree of traumas and crises. It does not mean that we cannot be happy if we have experienced that. We just have to deal with these issues. That can be done through therapy or through coaching or some other ways. And that will be that's a way to deal with these things in life. So they are still there, they're still part of my story, but they will not influence so much on my balance, on my happiness budget. You could say also that limiting beliefs, the things I believe that stands in way for me, is a very heavy liability in my life. And actually, self-esteem is an example of a limiting belief. Also, life attitude can be a product of my limiting beliefs. So if I'm a pessimist, it's not because I'm born a pessimist. It's because I've experienced things through life that based on that experience, I have a belief that life is difficult, life is hard, I can't trust no people, something like that. So I start to build a life attitude that is negative, and every time I have a new experience, I will look for the same result, and there's a great chance that I will actually get the same result. And that is the way I actually build a negative life attitude, or a positive one, if that is what I focus on. If we move to reality interpretation, that's a very heavy expense. That is the way the interpretations I make from reality. I can only see behavior. So if I watch other people, the only thing visible to me is their behavior. But I can become very professional in making interpretations of that behavior. So for instance, if I'm walking in the office and my boss is coming towards me and I said, "Hi boss, how are you doing?" and he does not salute me, I can start making interpretation. I can start thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Has he found out what I did yesterday? Am I the next one to become fired? I can make a lot of interpretations. And especially if I'm a bit stressed, if I'm not feeling too well, there's a great chance that I make negative interpretations in life. And perhaps my boss was just thinking about the meeting he was going to attend to with his boss, and he did not see me whatsoever. But still, the reality interpretations are heavy. Of course, I can also make positive reality interpretations, and then it would become an income instead. But as I said, if I'm a little bit stressed, there's a great chance that I make the negative reality interpretations. And stress is unfortunately a great expense in many countries, in many companies today. In Denmark, we have 20% of the population today is feeling stress on a regular basis. And when I feel stressed, where if I have too many working tasks, if I lose control of my work and feel that stress, it's very, very hard to be happy at the same time. And of course, in the same family are worries. During the last crisis, in Denmark at least, a lot of people have experienced to be fired from their job. And if you have been tried to be fired, or if you know something that have somebody who has been fired, then you might also know this worry, starting deep down in the stomach, starting to nag you. And if you feel worries, it's hard to be happy. Of course, it gives itself if you're depressed. You only have black thoughts, and then it's impossible to become happy. Do you know the grumble rubs? The grumble rubs are the people grumbling all the time, nagging about this and that and everything. And in Denmark, we had a research project showing that grumble rubs was the one thing that demanded the most energy from fellow workers. So if you're sitting next to a grumble rub that is complaining all the time, you might feel the energy just leaking out. I was making a speech in a police station the other day, and I was talking. They also knew the grumble rubs in their police department, and we were talking about whether it could be a criminal offense, because that is stealing energy. And in our times, we should be very careful with the amount of energy. So it could be a very serious crime to actually steal other people's energy. But we also agreed that you can't insure your house if you don't lock your door. So perhaps we cannot give the responsibility, the full responsibility of the leaking energy to the grumble rubs. Perhaps we have to lock our own door first. So now when I start to share with you the budget of happiness, when we talk about the power of thought, you might consider why. I show you this for two reasons. First of all, you might have a leverage point. You might have one point in your budget of happiness where you can actually put a focus. It might be an asset or an income you can increase, or you might be a liability or an expense that you can reduce in order to improve your budget and happiness. And it might be easier than you think. So that's one reason. The other reason I showed you this budget of happiness is that there's one factor lying beneath many of these different factors having influence of the budget. Actually, it could be a factor being beneath at least the orange factors, perhaps a little more, perhaps a little fewer. I don't know if you want to guess what factor is the one factor most influential at all, considering all these different yellow factors, orange factors. You might have guessed it by now. It's the thought. My thought might be the most influential factor whatsoever in almost all the factors in my budget of happiness. So if this is the case, then we might consider what we are thinking about instead of just continuing to think. thoughts that makes me stressed. It's the situation I am in. And of course, it's external factors that interacts with me. But when it comes to it, it's my thoughts that generate the stress. And I can prove this to you because we can have two people sitting next to each other. They have the same background, they are doing the same job. One is becoming stressed and one is not. Why is that? It's because we might not be able to change the world. We can influence the world, we might not be able to change it. But there's one thing where we have 100% influence. That is how we interpret, how we view, how we experience the world. So this does not mean that you are responsible and guilty if you are stressed and depressed. No, never. You are never responsible and never guilty of being stressed or depressed. On the other hand, you might have a greater influence on your situation that you actually believe. And that means that actually adjusting your thoughts might have a great effect on your budget of happiness. At the same time, it's very important for me to say that, well, okay, we just have to think positive then. Well, yeah, in principle, this is correct. We actually do have to think positive, but it might also be the most stupid thing we can tell people who are depressed or stressed. Because if we actually had the option, if we actually had the competence, then we would do it. So if we are stressed or depressed, it's because we cannot think positive. And just saying that we should think positive might be the most stupid thing we can tell other people. So what should we do then? Well, we might start thinking or considering the power of thought. If it is this powerful, then we should start thinking about it. What can it accomplish? Well, actually, as I showed you in the first story, we can almost kill ourselves just by thinking and believing. But imagine if it's possible also to do the opposite. There are great stories in literature, examples and evidence of the power of thought. A very important story is the story of a person who was diagnosed as schizophrenic, or actually not a schizophrenic. He was diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. So he had multiple personalities showing itself at different times. When he was in one personality, he was actually, his pancreas was not working. He was diabetic. He was not producing insulin, with all the physical effects that produced in the body. When he was in the other personality, his pancreas was actually working. He was not a diabetic. So this means that his belief about in what personality he was started and shut down one of his organs. This is what the power of thought can accomplish. Another exciting example for me was shown in the Swedish television years ago. It was a guy who was supposed to hypnotize a lady, and this lady was actually she was going to visualize that she had her hand in a bottle full of water with ice, and after that they were going to measure the difference of temperature in the two hands. There's a very common, you could say, test in hypnosis. So the hypnotist put the lady into hypnosis, and after doing so, after she was visualizing herself having her hand in the bucket of ice water, when she took up the hand afterwards, the thought itself had produced skin differentiations on her right hand. So you would actually be able to look at her hand and see skin differentiations, because these thought that her hand was in the bucket with ice cold water. So this is what the power of thought can. So if this is true, it might be the time where we start to consider how we can use this power of thought. And basically, we have two options. We can work with the power of thought in a consciously way. This is very possible. We can actually start being more conscious about what we think. And we can start doing it tomorrow. If you work with coaching, if you go into a coach session, actually a by effect, a secondary effect from coaching will be that it produces a larger degree of consciousness. And when you are become more conscious in daily life, then you have the option to start choosing your thoughts instead of just being victims of the thoughts. But it demands quite a lot of work. And you might have experienced in your life that you change a habit, change a line of thinking, and it works very good for you until the day after tomorrow, when you become a little bit stressed, something happens at work or in your family, you forget totally that you had changed your line of thinking and you go back to the old habit. If you have tried that, you know that in order to change things, we need to be conscious. And here we have, as human beings, we have a problem. We are not conscious. I would actually postulate that we are not conscious, that we are unconscious throughout our daily life, that we are sleepwalking each and every day. And this is because we do not have to be conscious. And I will tell you why. From we are born until we become 20 or 25 years of age, then we are developing and changing every day. But when we become more or less 25 years old, we have a job, we have a family, then we are not developing ourselves on a daily basis. Instead, we are starting to reproduce ourselves, repeat over and over what we did yesterday. A research project made in Denmark where they actually put GPS senders on, well, not on the head of a lot of people, but they put it in perhaps connected to a lot of people. They let these people walk around in the world for 1 month. And after 1 month, they collected the GPS senders and they experienced that 97% of the movements, physical movements in daily life, was a copy of yesterday. This means that we wake up in the morning in the same bed. We go down and have the same stuff for breakfast. We go the same way to work. We sit in the same chair doing the same stuff, going to the canteen or the restaurant, sitting in the same chair, eating the same food, driving home the same way, speaking to the same people, shopping in the same shopping mall, eating the same food, talking to the same friends. Perhaps we have a leisure activity which is the same day after day, week after week. We talk with the same people and go to bed and sleep in the same side of the bed. I'm sorry, this might not be very motivating right now, but trust me, it will become better. So this means that we are not, I thought maybe you think that you are changing all the time. I'm sad to say you are not. You are reproducing, repeating your whatever you do each and every day. And because you have done so 1,000 times, you don't need to be conscious. You can actually sleepwalk. Because all this stuff you can do without thinking and being conscious whatsoever. Maybe you have experienced going into your car at work and suddenly you are in your own driveway. How did you get there? And that's just an example of how unconscious we can be in life. And there's a good reason for this. It's because it's easier to produce and reproduce and repeat ourselves than it is to make a change. And this ability, this you could say behavior, we share with insects and pine trees. All living organisms in the entire universe are sharing this behavior because it's a matter of energy, and it's easier to repeat oneself than it is to do something differently. This is why that we repeat ourselves each and every day. And when I repeat myself, I do not need to be conscious. So this way I can play with my kids, and I can, in my mind, be somewhere else. I do not need to be present at the moment. And this might be one of the biggest challenges of our time. So one of the benefits is also a challenge. Because how can I change my behavior? How can I change my line of thinking if I'm unconscious? Instead, I need to train my consciousness. I can do so with working with a coach. I can do it if I make agreements with my wife or with friends that I want to do things differently, but it is a lot of work. The good thing is that there is an alternative. I can use the power of thought unconsciously. Actually, there is a way which is much easier, where I can improve my level of consciousness unconsciously. I don't know if this makes sense, but it will in a short while. We need to look at brain waves just for a while. Maybe you, as me, feel that we have two states of mind. Either I'm awake or I'm asleep. And this line shows exactly the second I go from the awakened state to the sleep state. These are the two states that most of us as people, are aware of. And when I'm awake, my brain is working at beta brain level 1. When we are work, this is here we work. Then if I work very hard, if I have a lot of stuff in my mind, if I'm very busy, I go to beta level 2. When my brain is working at beta level 2, I'm really using my brain as an engine on the highest possible level. We as human beings are privileged because we can do this. We can actually increase the CPU in our brain and put a lot of effort into our thinking. We can do several things almost simultaneously. And it's great for us, it's healthier for us, it's good for us. The only problem is if we do it for a long period of time, because then it start to become a problem. Because in order for the brain to relax, we need to move down to alpha waves. That's where our brain goes when we go to sleep. And when we move further down, we go into theta waves, the first 5-10 minutes of our sleep. And then we continue down to delta, which is deep sleep. From nature, we are actually benefited with a fantastic ability, because we can work very hard on beta 2 level. But if we continue to do this for a very long period of time, we become stressed. If we do not listen to the signs of stress and continue to work here, then finally the brain will go down like an engine. And actually, if we look at it very carefully, then we can see that part of the brain is actually damaged, like an engine with a black spot. And this black spot in the brain will never work again. Fortunately, the brain can reproduce or move move the workload to other parts of the brain. So we can still, you could say, start getting back to life little by little after being in such a heavy stress state. But from nature, we are actually built like this, that if we work at a beta 2 level, and then we go into sleep and go through alpha and theta level, then our brain is repairing itself. And this is a very fascinating state. It's called the altered state of consciousness. And research the last years has shown that this state of mind is absolutely amazing. It's a third state of mind. It's not awake, it's not sleep. We can be on this level, be awake and sleep at the same time. And when we are in the altered state of consciousness, our brain is repairing itself. The blood going through the brain is fixing the brain. The brain is getting more plastic. And furthermore, it's highly, highly open to stimuli from the outside. So this is how we can actually use the altered state of consciousness to increase our level of consciousness. And this is not a new invention, I'm sad to say, because it seems that all different kinds of meditations, mental training, self-hypnosis, mindfulness, and all different kinds of activities are all concentrated, and it's all about moving to the altered state of consciousness. So it does not matter how you do it, you just need to go there. Because, and why is that? It's because it's easy. You can learn it. It takes approximately 15 minutes a day. It's the subconsciousness that does the job. It does not cost anything, or if it does, it's very cheap. There are no negative side effects whatsoever. It will work for everyone, and first and foremost, the altered state of consciousness is an extremely healthy state. So let's look into what happens when the brain is working on that brain level. The ASC, the altered state of consciousness, has been under a lot of research in the recent years. And why is that? It's because mindfulness, it was invented 4,000 years ago, but the last 5-10 years, it has been investigated quite a lot. The same with mental training, originally used to help elite sports people to achieve better. But a lot of research has been put into the mental training. And now it shows that just staying in the altered state of consciousness has a lot of positive advantages. And I have shown you here a list of just a few of the evident advantages by being in the ASC. You improve your sleep. Do you remember the sleep? That was a part of your happiness budget. You get inner peace. This means that you actually reduce stress and anxiety. As you might remember, that was another topic that was an expense in the budget of happiness. You improve your tolerance. This means that you are not changing the world, but what happens in the world does not have the same effect on you. Studies shows that you will reduce depression symptoms and become more happy if you spend time in the altered state of consciousness. A Danish study showed that you will produce myelin. Myelin is the white or gray stuff in the brain that makes the receptors in the brain work properly. Earlier, man thought that myelin was actually produced, or it was there when we were born, and then we spend the rest of the life using the myelin. But research now shows that it is actually produced when you spend time in altered state of consciousness. You increase your level of focus and concentration. You can train on different things with mental training where you can actually improve your self-esteem. As you might remember from the budget of happiness, that was also one of the topics. You can even strengthen your immune system, research shows, so you don't get so much sick, so you get stronger. You can improve your mental resilience. You can also, and this is the key, get a higher degree of consciousness. And this happens without you doing any work whatsoever. You just have to sit or lay down for 15 minutes a day. And in a week or 2 or 3 or 4, little by little, you get a higher degree of consciousness. And this is the key, because if you get the higher degree of consciousness, then you get the right to choose. Instead of being a slave of your thought, a slave of your feelings, then you can actually, with the higher degree of consciousness in your life, you have a choice. You will be able to start choosing the line of thinking. You can start choosing the feelings you want to enhance, instead of being a slave of the thoughts and feelings and being emotionally captivated by your feelings and being a sleepwalker where you are just reproducing your feelings and your thinking and your behavior day after day throughout the life. All it takes is 15 minutes in a good chair or lying down. And because we can work directly with all the different issues in the budget of happiness, you will higher your degree of happiness in life. So you can do it. There are 2 ways. You can do it consciously, working with a coach. You can do it unconsciously, being on the altered state of consciousness. It does not matter what you choose, as long as you do something. Because one thing is for sure, if you do not do anything, you will get more of the same result. Martin Seligman is an American scientist, and he has said, amongst others, whether you believe a task is easy or difficult, you will be proven right. So this is just another example that what we believe, our thoughts, are probably the most important things we have. And imagine if you are more a slave of your thoughts than your thought. That if we just think and are slaves of our thinking, it is not certain that the thoughts we have are helping us. But if we start to take charge of our line of thinking, either by working consciously or by working unconsciously, by increasing the level of consciousness in our lives, we can change our life. And I can guarantee this will happen. So I would like to ask you a question now. What have you learned from this? And what will you do differently from today? One thing is for sure, if you continue to do the same, you will get the same result. So now please, if you do have any questions, you will have the option to text them or answer them, and I will try to do my very best to answer these questions.
Thank you, Jorgen. Las personas que deseen hacer alguna pregunta pueden darle clic a la manito y le damos el audio para que le pregunten directamente a Jorgen. Ok, Ediluz Mendoza de Fuentes. Te escuchamos, Ediluz.
Okay, I would like to know how can I meet my own hypnosis in a easy way?
Yes. Thank you for answer. Can you hear me?
Sure, yes.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for asking. Well, actually, you could say that when we say some things to ourselves, then we actually give ourselves what we call a suggestion. So if I tell myself, "Oh, I'm so stressed. Oh my God, I can't make it. I have too much to do," then I actually give myself suggestions. And because I give those suggestions to myself, they become the truth. So you could say that suggestions are thoughts put into action. And when I say these things to me, they become reality. So this is actually why I produce my own stress. It's because I keep on telling myself that I am stressed. So this is very, very fundamental stuff in the brain. And we can use this. This means that instead of giving ourselves the negative suggestions, we need to start to give ourselves positive suggestions. And as I said earlier, we have two ways. We have the conscious way. I can start in daily life. When I sit at the office, I can start saying to myself, well, I am busy, but I can make it. I'm sure I can make it. I know I can make it. And by giving myself these suggestions, I will actually start to believe that I can make it. There's only one challenge to this. It is proven many, many times that suggestions work. I mean, I can even stand in front of the mirror and I can scream to the mirror, yeah, I'm good looking, yeah, I'm fantastic looking, I'm awake, I feel good. But if I have a small inner voice saying, no, you look like shit, and I don't believe the suggestions I'm giving to myself, they do not work. So this is why the alternative is to work with suggestions in the subconsciousness. And there are different ways to do this. And as you say, self-hypnosis is one of the ways. So this means that you can use any kind of induction. It can be a self-hypnotic tape. It can be many people, they feel that they have benefits from using a tape in the beginning in order to help them. And these tapes will have suggestions saying, you get more relaxed, you feel better, you feel relaxed, you go deeper down into your subconsciousness, you get heavier and stuff like this. And by accepting these suggestions, you will actually get the feeling that you get more heavy and get into your subconsciousness. So far, so good. You can also get self-hypnotic tapes with all kinds of suggestions related to stress, to depression, to happiness, to focus, all different kinds of topics. All you have to do is Google the internet and you'll have a tremendous amount of self-hypnosis tapes showing up. So far, so good. The third option is that you actually do it by yourself. So you can do it either by telling yourself as you listen to relaxing music, I feel relieved, I feel calm, I go deeper, I feel good. So actually you can give yourself those suggestions going down to the subconsciousness. And while you are there, you can actually learn to continue to give yourself those kinds of suggestions. And if you do that in the altered state of consciousness, you will believe what you say to yourself because the critical filter exists on beta level. So this means that when you are in the altered state of consciousness and you give yourself suggestions, you would believe they are true. A fourth possibility is that you make your own sound file, that you record the self-hypnotic suggestions on an iPhone or whatever, and then you actually listen to them by yourself. It can be a little bit weird in the beginning to listen to yourself, but you will get used to it. And it's, for many people, this is more easy because you don't have to actually deal with it whilst you are meditating. You can just be listening to the words, your own words, and actually that is the strongest way you can do self-hypnosis. That's by listening to your own words. Either you tell them to yourself or you record them and play them back to yourself. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Of course. Thank you very much. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, other questions? Si tiene preguntas en español, se puede ponerlo en español también y yo voy a probar contestarlo en español y en inglés también. I was just telling that if you have any questions in Spanish, you would put them in Spanish, so I'll try to translate it to Spanish and English.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'd like to know how can we join this meditation or alpha state of mind techniques with the coaching that we have to or we want to offer to clients later. How can we guide them to do these techniques, or can you help me with that?
Yeah. There are different ways. HCN will very soon have also self-hypnosis courses in the program. So you will be able to learn how to do it. And also, if you are a coach, you can actually learn very quickly how to use the hypnosis or the suggestions in your coaching practice. Or you can suggest to your clients, if you are a coach, that they look themselves on the internet for self-hypnosis sound files or mental training sound files or mindfulness or whatever they want to do. So, I mean, this is something that it's very, very cheap and very easy for everyone to get hold on the internet today. The only challenge is to get it done. And so if you are in a coaching process, part of the coaching process could be to help the coachee to stay to continuously practice the mental training or the mindfulness, because it works with guarantee, but it only works if you do it. It's like any other training whatsoever. But as I said, if you're working with coaching, then you also are working with increasing the level of consciousness, and that is the key, as I said in the show. And it does not matter how you increase the consciousness. The most important thing is that it gets increased, so you will have the choice. And when you have the choice, you can start changing the line of thinking and behavior.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Horacio desde Chile nos está preguntando por texto, how I, as an executive coach with no experience in clinic psychology, say or know that a coachee needs therapy and not coaching?
Well, I think that's a very, very good question. It's a little bit out of the topic for today. In my experience, the person who goes to the coach because he wants a coach. And I believe if we are a coach, and if we use the coaching questions, meaning that we are looking into the goals and looking into the dreams of the person sitting in front of us, then this might be exactly what this person needs. So one of the great differences between therapy and coaching is that in therapy we go into the problem and investigate the problem. In coaching, the problem is not very interesting. What is very interesting for me is to know what my coachee wants to achieve. So I have confidence that if a person comes to me, it's because they want to move away from whatever they are in into something different. And I've been practicing coaching for the last 10 years on a full-time scale. And I guess I've had one or two coachees that was in such a bad shape that they themselves realized that they needed something differently, that they needed to go into therapy somehow. Apart from that, in my experience, when people go to a coach, it's because they want coaching. So it's up to the coach actually. What are the beliefs of the coach? If I hear a person telling that I feel bad, I'm stressed, I have great problems, how do I know what they need? So I think my job as a coach is to ask, what do you want?
Thank you. Ok, ¿alguna otra pregunta? Quien tenga alguna otra pregunta, por favor, levante la mano y con gusto le damos el acceso al audio. José Luis Arcila. José Luis, te escuchamos. ¿Aló? ¿Aló? No. Hasne también tiene otra pregunta. Hasne, ¿nos escuchas?
¿Me oyes?
Yes, sí.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. My question is, what kind of meditation do you recommend, in special for the beginners?
First of all, I think that it is very, very important that you choose something that you find is good for you. There are many different schools of meditation, and I think that each and every school of meditation has its own benefits. I myself, I do mental training, which is self-hypnosis. I think that is a very efficient and very easy way because you get help from the suggestions. So that is normally in meditation you don't work with suggestions, you just work with the relaxed state, so you get help to go into the alternate state of consciousness. But the difference between meditations and self-hypnosis and mental training is that the mental training and self-hypnosis actually use the altered state of consciousness to achieve something. So it's not only about learning how to be in the altered state of consciousness, it's also using this state to actually train different things. It can be visualization, it can be training focus, it could be training more, getting more self-esteem, It could be training, getting rid of anxiety, stuff like that. So first of all, the most important thing is being in a state, alternate state of consciousness. And it does not matter whatsoever how you do it, as long as you get there. But if you want to use or get the maximum out of that altered state of consciousness, then my suggestion would be self-hypnosis or mental training. But again, whatever you feel is good for you is the best for you.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thank you. Ok, con esta pregunta finalizamos. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you, Jorgen, por la conexión el día de hoy. Y les acabo de colocar a través del chat el Twitter de Jorgen para que lo sigan y le hagan aquellas preguntas que consideren
No sé,
interesantes,
deja el chat, ese que él siempre.
que consideren interesante realizar, ¿ok? El Twitter de
So thank
Jorgen
you.
es @Jorgen Svenstrup.
Thank you very much. It was a great pleasure being here. I wish you the best thoughts in the world.
Thank you, Jorgen. Mi invitación entonces para todos es esta tarde a las 19 horas Chile a conectarnos nuevamente a través de nuestros webinars de la Cumbre Virtual de Coaching y vamos a tener la oportunidad de conocer el uso de la intuición estratégica en el coaching de la mano de la Master Coach Francis Bell. Entonces nos vemos esta tarde a las 19 horas Chile. Recuerden registrarse en el webinar a través del correo que les llegó. Muchísimas gracias a todos y feliz tarde.